It's a pleasure to see you all. I've met some of you at other talks, and if this is your first time here, it's a pleasure to meet you. Today, we are going to have a conversation about one of the subjects that make up our philosophy course, Stoicism. This Stoicism that has become so popular nowadays. If you go to a good bookstore, you will find 3 or 4 titles today that talk about Stoicism. Sometimes with alternative names, sometimes speaking directly about Stoicism. Today we revisit this school intensely. I'm not sure we understand it intensely. In reality, we tend to interpret things only as far as they are convenient for us. Beyond that, we do not. Stoicism, I believe, so to speak, that even a single drop of true, authentic Stoicism might be enough to shake up our civilization a bit. Because it is a school of thought with a very strict moral code, one to which we are no longer very accustomed today. We neither truly understand the reason behind this morality, nor do we grasp what it actually consists of. Ultimately, we are living in a time marked by a significant moral vacuum. Stoicism was a school created for times of crisis, and we are currently experiencing one of those moments. So perhaps, and probably for this reason, Stoicism has come back into fashion. And we've heard in passing about its various characteristics. Today, we'll reflect on the thoughts of one of these Stoic philosophers. Just so you have an idea, Stoicism began in Greece and was later brought to Rome. However, from Greek Stoicism, not a single work has survived. The works we have on Stoicism come only from 3 Roman, Latin authors, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Just these 3. There are no other works. I recommend any works by these 3. For Epictetus, you don't have much choice, you'll have only his handbook. For Marcus Aurelius, it's the same, there's only one option, his Meditations. Seneca, on the other hand, has a much broader body of work. You can read many different things by him. Perhaps the most well-known is On the Shortness of Life, and there are other interesting works as well. Who knows the new Acropolis YouTube channel? Many people know it. If you haven't checked it out, take a look. We have 1,000 talks there now. It has every title imaginable, everything. There are several talks about Seneca and many about Stoicism as a whole. But, in any case, today we'll talk about Epictetus. This school has something interesting. Among these 3 great thinkers, there's one, Epictetus, who was actually a slave. He doesn't even own himself. And on the other hand, you have Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who, at that time, ruled the world. It was a mighty empire that ruled the world. In other words, on one side, there is someone living in a moment of absolute power, and on the other, someone who had no power even over himself, because he was a slave. And this emperor, although he never met him in person, declared himself a disciple of this slave. Interesting, huh? He took his moral examples as a reference for his own life. So, it is truly worthwhile to get to know the practical philosophy of Stoicism. I won't cover Stoicism's history here, it's easy to find. You can just go to our dear Wikipedia, which will tell you the whole story, all the dates, and where it all took place. I don't think it's really worthwhile to attend a talk just to hear the history of a movement. What I wanted to share with you are some reflections, so we can see how we might bring this into our own lives. Some of the most powerful moments in Stoicism. There are times when it really feels like they want to give us an electric shock, just to see if we wake up. I've brought some of these moments so that we can reflect on them together. I picked the philosopher Epictetus, and we will talk about him. Well, let's begin. Stoic Wisdom for a Fulfilling Life. I'm using this book, The Art of Living. Well, it's a book that's an updated compilation. In other words, they adapted the philosopher Epictetus's manual, the Enchiridion, into modern language. Epictetus, this great philosopher I mentioned to you, lived from 55 to 135 AD. In other words, he died in the 2nd century AD. What did he write? Nothing at all, absolutely nothing. one of his disciples, Flavius Arrian, took notes during his lectures. And first, he said, he'll do a set of notes, which are the discourses. However, since the discourses were somewhat lengthy and scattered, he decided to condense the main points into a manual, which is the one I mentioned, the Enchiridion. And recently, the American author Sharon Lebel took the Enchiridion and translated it into a more contemporary vocabulary to make it more accessible. She remains very faithful to the meaning of the content, but adapts it to the language of our times, which makes it easier to understand. I believe the Stoics would appreciate this. They loved for their philosophy to be well understood and lived. It is definitely not a school for those who wish to flaunt intellectualism. It is a school for those who truly want to change their lives, starting now. And it is very direct and very clear about this. So, we'll get to know it, and I recommend this book. For those who are not familiar, The Art of Living is excellent for anyone who wants to have their first contact with Stoicism, because it is a very simple book to read. You can open to any chapter at random, and wherever you land, it is worthwhile. There is no need to follow a specific reading order. It truly is very interesting. So let's get started. The first thought I picked for us to talk about, I've had the chance, over the course of my life, to go out and collect different ideas about certain virtues, certain states, like, for example, happiness. For a period of time, I went about collecting every concept of happiness I could find in order to gain a sense of what it truly is. I usually tell people that I had a very curious habit. I don't have it anymore. They made me stop. My habit was to write these thoughts on poster boards and stick them to my closet door with tape. It didn't look very nice, but it was certainly inspiring. So, many phrases about happiness became what I call closet door phrases. And this one is one of the VIPs among the closet door phrases. It is perhaps one of the most beautiful concepts of happiness that I know. It comes from Epictetus, which we'll see now. Take a look at how interesting this is. Happiness is a verb. In other words, it is not a noun, not something static. It is a verb. It is the continuous, dynamic, and ongoing performance of acts of value. Do you understand? This part of the definition, the continuous, dynamic, ongoing performance of acts of value. When you follow principles, when you practice human values, when you act in a way that is aligned with values, virtues, and the wisdom inherent to a human being, you will not simply achieve happiness as a result of that. Happiness is right beneath your feet at this very moment. I was fair. Where was happiness? It was beneath my feet at the exact moment when I acted justly. I was fraternal, I was kind. Because the idea of good is the highest of all virtues, in that moment when I was being so, I was experiencing happiness. I was practicing what is best in human nature. And there is no greater way for a human being to be happy than when they do what is truly their own nature. Each person fulfills themselves by being who they are. So I imagine plants doing photosynthesis must be having the time of their lives, because that's what they do. And they find fulfillment by being what they are. Animals also fulfill themselves by following their instincts. Human beings, when they act according to values, principles, universal values, are meant to be in a state of ecstasy, the highest state of happiness, because that is when they live up to what nature expects of them, when they fulfill their role. Happiness isn't something you'll achieve later for what you've done. It is here, in this very moment, right beneath your feet, when you practice acts of value. So, if you go to pick out, it's an experience to do this for self-discovery. If we did this during the day, for example, the moments when I was happiest, today, yesterday, at the end of each day, keeping a journal, writing this down, the moments of greatest happiness, you would find exactly the moments when you were acting in the noblest, most honest, most fraternal, most just, and kindest way. There you would find your peak of happiness. Our peaks of happiness are found in the practice of values, of universal principles. That is where we find what we call happiness. Since we are often confused and heavily influenced by our environment, we end up chasing after other things, believing they will bring us happiness. They may even provide you with a sense of well-being, especially if they are accompanied by truly human behavior. But they are not enough to provide true happiness. In other words, I spend the whole year dreaming about my vacation. There comes a point when, if I don't have the chance during this vacation to practice something meaningful, to show some fraternity, justice, or kindness, you know what will happen? You will get tired of your vacation. There will come a certain point, I see this happen in workplaces, when you go back to work and actually need some time to recover from your vacation because it was so exhausting and tedious. Eventually, it all feels empty, and you start to miss something more meaningful. Simply stopping, doing nothing, just sunbathing. I am a plant that photosynthesizes. Soaking up sun gets tiring. There comes a point it's tiresome. Tiresome of what? Of drinking, of eating. It's not enough. And then you just stay there, kind of, what I'm doing here. In other words, if you're not engaged in practicing values, none of these things will bring you true moments of happiness. What's quite curious is that there are moments of fame. I was recognized, I won a title, I took first place in something. But look, if there isn't at least a bit of humility, a bit of kindness, a bit of gratitude for those who helped you achieve that title, that position, it's actually a terrible place to be. It's terrible. You feel people looking at you not with admiration, but with envy. And you feel a certain fear, don't you? You wonder what people are thinking, how your life will be from that point on. In the end, none of these things that society promises. Happiness, whether it's success, achievement, vacation, rest, or fun, whatever it is, may it bring you happiness in itself. They don't bring it. They'll bring states of insecurity, many times of fear. Often, there's that feeling of being an imposter, right? Do I really deserve to be here? In short, 1,000 things cross your mind. True happiness is really found when you're practicing acts of value. And then he goes on to say something truly interesting. Look at this. Our life is built moment by moment, and it has meaning for us and for the people we touch. Our life is built moment by moment. For example, in this very moment. This is a moment when we have gathered here to try to talk about something that can help us grow. How often do I pause in my daily life to listen to something, simply because it might help me grow? It's not very frequent, so this is a special moment. Here, we are all completely different people. Each of you has your own address, your own origin, your own profession, your own age. We are different, and yet we are united in this moment by one thing. Well, see to hear something that can allow us to elevate our consciousness, to leave here more human than when we arrived. Do you realize that we are united by something very noble? This is not something that happens very often in our lives, so this is a special moment. Right now, we are creating a special and meaningful moment for our lives. In other words, our life is built moment by moment. Every time you do something meaningful, something truly human, it becomes part of that list of things that truly matter. There is a story that I really like, and I believe it fits perfectly here. It is said that there was a man who was a traveler who loved to visit many cities. He had a strange habit, not sure why. In every city he visited, he wanted to see the cemetery. He would arrive in a city, explore it, get to know it, and then visit the cemetery. Then, one fine day, he arrived in a small town, and as always, after visiting the town, he went to the cemetery. When he reached the cemetery, he was greatly surprised, because this cemetery was very different. On the tombstones, it wasn't written, "So-and-so was born on such a date and died on such a date." There weren't any dates, just some numbers, some amounts. I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years, sometimes just a month. Various amounts were written on the tombstones. He kept thinking, what could this be? What does this mean? So he decided to look for an old resident of the town, an elder, and asked, "I'm not understanding anything. At the cemetery, I saw numbers 1 year, 6 months, 8 months. What do they mean?" "Ah, my friend, we write on the tombstones not the time we simply spent on earth, but the time when we were truly alive. The time we paid attention, grew, did our best. That's the only time we notice. Sometimes, for certain people, it might be a week, for others, 2 years, 3 years. Only that time. The time of truly living. Do you notice that when we are doing something that elevates our consciousness, striving to become a true human being? Better, trying to put our values into practice, that is the time that will be inscribed on that headstone. It is time that is truly worthwhile. In other words, our life is built moment by moment, and these are the moments that can be added to that list. We should always strive to remember this story and seek out moments that can be included on that list, so that we can increasingly take ownership of larger portions of our lives. Do not let everything slip away in distraction and mere survival. So, our life is built moment by moment, and it holds meaning both for ourselves and for the people we touch. There's something interesting. We often work on advertising something, promoting it. That's valid, and in many cases, it really needs to be done. But the greatest promotion you can give to something is to be absolutely loyal to it. It is remarkable how this radiates outward, especially in a world where people rarely see coherence, real coherence. I mean, someone who is truly, genuinely committed to what they're saying. This is rare in our times. When you, instead of just talking about an idea, truly live that idea, you catch people's attention and impact them more than simply talking about it. We're tired of all the empty talk, of so much theory. If you look at the internet, YouTube, for example, you'll see many people giving speeches. If you shake it, thousands will fall out. It is truly remarkable how many people speak beautifully, motivated by interests, commercial gain, the desire for fame, or whatever else it may be. And sometimes, speaking eloquently about unpleasant things, mistakes, or things he's not really committed to. We are deeply saturated with chatter that does not translate into people's lives. Everyone is tired of this. So, if you are coherent, you are someone who stands out. Your values will stand out. Your way of life will stand out. It is like a stone you throw into the water, with ripples that keep expanding further and further. You do not know where it will stop. How far does the influence of that stone touching the water reach? The influence of a coherent, integral human being goes very far. Much more than we can imagine. So, the fact that we are who we are makes a difference not only for ourselves, but also for the people around us. Anyone who has had the opportunity to spend time with you, even just a little, will have one more option in the menu of choices in their life. To have elevated ideas, and to be coherent with them. The menu of options currently offered to humanity does not include this option. If you live this option, you will add this option to humanity's menu. And people will have one more choice. They will be freer. They will have one more possibility to choose. In other words, who we are, in some way, changes the world. More than we can foresee. This keeps spreading, radiating, reaching people who will imitate it and radiate it even more, and more. When we witness a simple act that has traveled across the world, especially nowadays when we have such effective means of communication, a touching act from someone deeply human, when you see people across the world talking about it, it truly radiates because of its rarity, its beauty, and because so many people are in need of this kind of example. So, it radiates and reaches many people, benefiting many along the way. There's a philosophical saying that I really like, as the saying goes, which says that the best thing we can do for those we love is what, can you guess? The best thing we can do for those we love is to grow as human beings. Exactly that. Because you give them a reference point they'll never lose in their lives. In difficult situations, in times of adversity or risk, he has this reference point, which is the life you showed him. This will help you in life. Sometimes you leave an apartment or car in a rush. If someone lacks financial stability, they burn through it, get rid of everything, and end up with nothing. But the example you set will always be valuable to them, for their entire life. In other words, who we are does not belong only to ourselves. It has an effect, it radiates, it impacts humanity. All around us. Today, we are here talking about certain individuals, like Epictetus, for example, who lived 1800 years ago. And his life is still echoing now. Isn't that fascinating? In a time when there were no means of communication like we have today, his life is still echoing here among us. Continuing on, he goes on to say this. The word used here is fidelity. But the word that would be most appropriate for us to understand this passage is trust. I kept the word used in the book, but here I think trust would fit better. So imagine this. Trust is the right attitude. It is to believe in life as a whole, ordered according to laws. It is not wanting to control what does not depend on us. So, the first thing is to believe in life as a whole, ordered according to laws. In other words, the universe is not chaos, it is cosmos. There is an order for things to be as they are. They have something to offer us, they have an answer to give us, they have a path to show us by behaving the way they do. All events are drawn by a law called the law of necessity. This law of necessity comes to bring the lessons that all beings journeying through life need to receive. In other words, the needs of evolving beings write history. There is nothing that is random. There is nothing that has happened out of nowhere. Everything comes from a cause that was generated, a necessity that was created. And they come as an effect, an educational effect, so that this person or these people may learn, awaken, and see a direction. So, if we trust that life is an ordered whole, that there is no chaos, that everything is cosmos, everything is order, and not try to control what does not depend on us, it's up to us, which is another thing Stoicism talks about a lot, not to dwell on things that are out of our control. Epictetus, once again, who was a slave for much of his life, spoke about this. It was his concept of slavery. Once someone asked him, "Are you a slave?" People kept saying that he was free. He replied, "Do you know what a slave is?" A slave is someone who, when it comes to what depends on him, does nothing, but when it comes to what does not depend on him, he keeps crushing the circumstances. What does this mean? I always use the same practical example because it is very common and all of us fall into this trap. Here in Brasilia, there is a good example of this, which is that well-known Briguito Bridge. We have a school that is located just after it, and I taught there for many years. People would arrive late every day, stressed out, because the traffic was terrible, because someone cut them off, always late. Every class, people would arrive our classes, or once a weekend they'd show up irritated, Machado de Assis, they'd honked at everyone, picked fights with everyone, complained about the city administration for not fixing that road, basically, all those things that are out of their control. They had done all of that. It is not up to them to change the road, it is not within their control. Changing the city's administration doesn't depend on them, or change bad drivers or grumpy drivers who cut you off. None of that depends on them. They kept complaining. But when it was up to them, like leaving half an hour earlier, no one did anything. Isn't that curious? It is curious. Do you know what that is, according to Epictetus? Slavery. When it comes to what depends on you, what do? In practice, nothing. And with everything that isn't up to you, you keep banging your head against the wall. This is closely related to the Stoic concept. Do not try to control what is beyond your power, but in what depends on you, do your very best. Trust that life knows what it is doing. But I also need to know what I'm doing, to give my best in what is my responsibility. Faithfulness is the antidote to bitterness and perplexity. In other words, trust. If I trust that nothing happens by chance, as Emperor Marcus Aurelius used to say, nothing happens to a human being that is not proper to humanity, that does not serve the need for human growth, that does not come to smooth out our rough edges and help us to grow. Everything has meaning, so this brings me peace, because I do not feel like a victim of injustice, I do not feel like a victim of chance, I do not feel persecuted, none of that. What happened to me was exactly what I needed in order to grow. If it hadn't been this person, it would have been someone else. If it hadn't been this circumstance, it would have been another. But I needed to experience this situation, to overcome certain internal limitations and to grow. Therefore, I trust in life. Plato spoke about this, that one of the worst things that can happen to a person is when they do not understand the purpose of life, and they begin to believe that chaos exists and that they have been wronged. We experience this today. It is something extremely powerful within society. And what is it? Victimization. It's like Manuel Bandera. Isn't that right? We are all poor victims. Everyone is out to get us. Everyone is in our way. If it weren't for these people, I would be doing just fine. I'm constantly being hindered by someone. You are not being hindered by anyone. These people came into your life because you needed to go through this. Learn what life is trying to teach you through this. Grow, because then no one like that person or that circumstance will appear in your life again. If you trust in life, it becomes much easier to endure adversities. I don't know why, but I know there is meaning in this suffering. I'll seek to grow from it. I'll face the difficulty, determined that I will only come out on the other side greater than when I entered. I will strive to grow through challenges. This trust in life gives you a profound state of peace and tranquility. Tremendous. I don't know why, but this has come to meet a need. There was something I needed to learn from this. So, this is an extremely important element. Trusting in life gives us a state of tranquility. We feel as if we are resting in the arms of the Father. Whatever may be happening, it serves a need of the whole and of my own. So, I will seek to learn from this and continue to grow. Look at how beautiful this phrase is. Some of them are true works of art. Kindness is both the practice and the reward itself. It is enough for us to be happy. Kindness is both the practice and the reward itself. It is enough for us to be happy. What is the greatest reward for someone who is kind? It is precisely in being kind. They don't need anything else. There is nothing better than that. Kindness is the greatest of all virtues. Plato said that from the idea of good, all other virtues are born. When kindness touches an unjust situation, it becomes justice. When kindness touches a situation of need, it becomes fraternity. If I'm practicing kindness, I need nothing more. I'm absolutely complete. It is not simply a merit, it is, in itself, the reward, because it gives me the best that a human being can have. If we look at the structure of personality as described by in Carl Jung's analytical psychology, you'll see that he represents our field of consciousness as a circle, as our field of consciousness. Then he places a central self, which is our true identity, and a series of peripheral little selves. What are these peripheral little selves? A habit you have, a prejudice you hold. I don't know, a trauma, a preference you have for certain things, a series of elements that live on the periphery, which, from time to time, you bring into your awareness and give them a voice. But you have a center that is truly you, your real identity. And when you focus your consciousness on this center, you realize that you are being authentic, that you are being yourself. And how do we go about discovering this center within ourselves, our true identity? He spoke precisely about kindness. When you take a moment to reflect on what you have done throughout a day or over the course of a week, you will notice that when you are practicing kindness, you feel that you are being authentic, that you are truly yourself. When you perform an act of kindness, of benevolence, you realize that in that moment you were not wearing any mask, you were being your true self. It seems that our innermost nature is made of the very same substance as kindness. Do you understand? When you practice kindness, you are expressing your deepest and truest identity. So much so that, when you look back in perspective, you say, in those moments, that was truly me who was acting. In the other moments, I was wearing masks. But in those moments, it was really me, precisely in the moments of greatest kindness. Therefore, kindness is both the practice and the reward itself, because there is nothing better than acting in the world while being our true selves. One more reflection for us to make from time to time is to look at our day and ask ourselves, at what moment today was I not wearing a mask? At what moment? because we wear masks that sometimes become stuck to our faces and we don't know how to take them off. It's the mask we wear at home, which is a certain way we relate to our family, a kind of comfort zone. But we don't truly believe in that. It's not who we would like to be. It's the mask you put on at work. When you notice how heavy that is, I believe that's where our greatest exhaustion comes from. Ours come from circumstances dragging masks through life. When, in a certain moment, you feel that you are truly yourself, it brings a sense of relief and extraordinary freedom. It is a glorious moment. In other words, the practice of goodness is, in itself, its own reward. It needs nothing else, nothing beyond that. That alone is enough for us to be happy. If we could always do this, we would be absolutely happy. So, within us, there is a struggle, a battle, between our authentic face and our masks. It's a constant tug of war. And as we manage to succeed in this ongoing tug of war, as we gradually manage to win, we become progressively happier. We begin to leave our true mark on the world, because until then, by wearing masks, we haven't even shown up in the world. We haven't stated what we'll see, we haven't made our presence known in the world. We only truly make our presence felt when we are being who we really are, that is, when we are faithful to ourselves. We must tune our character as if it were the strings of an instrument. Kindness is the subtle readjustment of our character throughout our entire lives. What does it mean to adjust our character? In fact, what is character? Look, guys, let me tell you something you might think I am exaggerating, but am really not at all. Philosophy is a kind of realphabetization. Basically, you take many words from your own vocabulary, words that were completely empty of meaning, and you come to understand what they really mean. So many things that, even after all these years of schooling, sometimes I have to remind people what a certain word means, just to avoid making a mistake. Because for us, these words have been completely redefined. Philosophy is almost like a relearning of the alphabet for life. And one of the things we need to relearn is character. We go around saying, oh, so-and-so has bad character, or that person doesn't have good character. But do we really have such good character ourselves? What is character? Plato has a passage in a dialogue called The Republic, where he says the following, that we are all born with inclinations. Inclinations to like certain things and to reject others. We are born with this tendency. Through the process of education, we should have been taught to appreciate everything that helps us grow, and to reject everything that makes us more animalistic, that makes us coarse, crude, selfish, or envious. Everything that, as Cruz y Souza would say, we should have been taught to reject. And that is the formation of character. Learning to appreciate everything that humanizes you and to reject everything that degrades you. That freezes you or makes you regress. If you stop to analyze our preferences, everything that we like, is it really that beneficial for our growth? Or do we enjoy a lot of trivial things that sometimes only hold us back? How much time? Sometimes I notice, as we all do in our world, people sitting in front of their phones, watching trivial things. This has become an addiction. The number of people addicted to this is no joke. Is this truly beneficial for our growth? How many useful things could you be doing during that time? How many interesting projects could you be working on that would benefit other people? In other words, this only delays your life with absolutely irrelevant information that adds nothing and leads nowhere. Isn't that right? Scrolling through that endless feed on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever it may be. Does it bring anything of real value here? It brings absolutely nothing, but we like it. This is poor character development. Enjoying things that only steal our time, that bring us nothing. No benefit, things that make us have an inappropriate attitude in life, treating people the wrong way. All of that is poor character development. And rejecting good things, because we do that too. We turn away from situations that sometimes end up closing doors for us in life. You have probably experienced this yourselves. Wow, I said no. If I had said yes, that could have been an extraordinary opportunity for growth. Who hasn't made that mistake? Rejecting a relationship with someone in a work environment, something like that, over something trivial, some silly prejudice, and that person could have helped you grow so much. They might even have become a good friend. We turn down work situations where we could have learned so much. We refuse to control our own temper a little in order to make the environment more pleasant. We reject things throughout life that would have been truly beneficial. We push them away. This is a sign of poor character development. Therefore, if we really analyze it, our character, as people often say, isn't really all that great. This is true. We must be careful when we accuse others of lacking character. Now, even though this information may seem a bit overwhelming, there is good news. We can reform our character at any moment in our lives. It's something simple called learning to appreciate. We even do this with our sense of taste. Has it ever happened to you that you learn to enjoy a certain food? If our sense of taste, which is the most basic form of preference, can change, then the more subtle aspects can change as well. We can learn to appreciate things that we rationally recognize as good, as healthy, as things that uplift us. We can learn both to appreciate and to reject. This is the ongoing adjustment of our character throughout our entire lives. This is the kind of practice that you must carry on for your whole life. Wait, I'm leaning towards something that isn't good. Let me learn to reject that. Let me learn to appreciate something that I'm avoiding, which could actually be very beneficial for me. This is a lifelong process. Then he goes on to say that we should fine-tune our character as if we were tuning the strings of an instrument. Kindness is the tuning fork. It is the ongoing adjustment of our character throughout our entire lives. As long as we are alive, we must keep adjusting, tuning the strings of our musical instrument, and learning to appreciate the things that are good for us. Many circumstances will arise, many situations will present themselves. We must learn to value what helps us grow. This is a lifelong journey. In other words, it is a necessary craft that each of us should embrace. We must always reform our character so that it becomes ever more coherent, more integral, and more humane. Continuing on. Clearly define the person you want to become. Write it down in your journal. You might wonder, do I really need a journal? Aren't journals for teenagers who write "Dear Diary" in round, curly letters? Friends, that's not really what a journal is about, is it? A journal is for you to record what you've been doing with your life. And in this sense, as it's being suggested here, it becomes extremely useful. Do you know what this means? It means that, at a certain moment, you have the courage to do an exercise in imagination. Guys, imagination exercises are no joke. They can help us gain insights and become aware of things. In a remarkable way, they work very well and are truly valuable. I invite you to do an exercise in imagination. Imagine the very end of our lives, those final days, facing death, in the imminence of death. What kind of human being would I like to be at that moment? Do you agree with me that you've spent your entire life building this human being? That your masterpiece is the result of everything you have worked on throughout your whole life? Therefore, is this the closest to your ideal self that you have ever become? What kind of human being is it that you would like to be? What virtues would you have liked to develop? What flaws would you have liked to have overcome? What would you have liked to do for the people around you, for the world, for yourself? When you look back and see your trail, what kind of mark would you have liked to leave on the world? Define this clearly, and preferably write it down so it becomes truly concrete. When we only think about things, they are very volatile. Soon after I think about something, I might not even remember what I was thinking. Write it down. I want to be this kind of human being. This has a value you can't even imagine, because now you have a reference point. You know where you want to go. You are no longer lost. Do you understand? When I'm offered something in life like, do you want to do this? Do you want to earn that I weigh it? Does this bring me closer to my ideal? To my purpose? If it brings me closer, yes. If it doesn't, then no. Now, I have a reference point for direction. I can value things based on it. I can make appropriate choices. From that point on, I have values. What takes me there is good, other way is bad. Good and evil, right and wrong, true and false are. Everything arises from there, from the moment you have a reference point for direction. Have the courage to build this. Dream about the human being you would like to become. Do not be afraid to be bold. Really dream of a person of integrity, someone whose presence makes others feel good, who brings well-being, and who teaches people how to truly live. I want to be like that, and I will not give it up. That is what I want. In some way, this will already be with you in this very moment. Just to seek justice is a guiding principle in my life. I must be just in this moment. In other words, this will begin to transform your life from now on. This is fundamental. So he says, clearly define the person you want to become and write it down in your journal. And do not give this up under any circumstances. At some point, you might think of an additional detail that I would also like. You can keep adding details to this image easily. But remain faithful to it. You are already someone who has a light at the end of the tunnel. You are not lost. You are projecting a valuable model. The seeds of greatness within us need an image to focus on and to germinate. There is a void within us, which is where I'll find inspiration to build myself, like a sculptor who looks at the model and then listens to the stone. And this void, if we don't consciously fill it with something we believe in, society will fill it for us without us even realizing it. If you look, it's actually quite interesting. I don't really keep up with this because I don't have time to watch soap operas. But sometimes, when a soap opera is really popular, you see people on the streets imitating the leading man or the star of the show, sometimes even in the way they dress or talk. Do you notice that? Whether it's an artist, a person, or whoever they look up to, we all need a role model. And when there aren't great role models, people end up looking for them among those that society puts in front of us. He is pop superstar. Look at human, amazed. But that's the reference society gives us. It's the characters in soap operas that leave me outraged, since I've never seen that let's keep this between us. I have never seen beings as useless as soap opera characters. I've never seen it. They never do anything meaningful for anyone. They have no great purpose, no point of reference. The only meaning in their lives is to fall in and out of love and create drama. Nothing else, nothing else. It's incredible. So, if you don't consciously choose a role model, Plato used to say we should have a personal hero. If you don't consciously choose a model, one will be chosen for you. Before you know it, you're imitating one of those models. Without even realizing it, you're copying one of those examples. Choose a historical figure, someone you consider great, or someone in your life, grandfather, father, or anyone who inspired you. Take them as your model. This helps you to grow. When you have doubts, you can imagine, what would that person do in this situation? This will guide you. It will give you direction. It greatly helps us to establish our own model. Imitate a valuable example. These are very practical things. If you have come into contact with a valuable role model in your life, whether contemporary or from history, don't let that opportunity slip by. Stick close to that model. Take that person as a reference. It will make your journey much easier. It is a privilege to have someone who inspires you in life. And humanity has had inspiring human beings. All it takes is for us to truly want to connect with them. Continuing on. Philosophy exposes the false premises of our lives, which are the causes of our suffering. It takes courage, it's tough. It really does take courage because we have a shell, a mask. I often joke with my students, saying that we have a kind of mental cash register too. And that is truly what we have. Throughout these 36 years I've been with New Acropolis, people, often students, would come up to me and say, "Professor, Why do I believe in certain things, but when it's time to act, I do something else? That's quite a question, isn't it? Why do I believe in certain things, but when it's time to act, I do something different? And so I always explain to them this idea of the mental second ledger. Do you know what that means? We have a beautiful answer. If you ask me what I think about life, what I think about how I should respond to adversity, I'll quote to you Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, those beautiful phrases. But when I actually find myself in a difficult situation, that's when I pull out this little explanation of the second ledger. Because I think that explanation only works in theory, not in real life. So, for example, it tells you to maintain the rule of reason in extreme situations. In moments of crisis, in other words, then you find yourself stuck in a traffic jam. Everyone is cutting you off, honking, chaos, it's hot in the car and you can't move, crawling in first gear, it's hell. What do you think in that moment? Here, it has to be my way. Plato doesn't know anything. In his time, there were no traffic jams. So, here, it has to be my way, because otherwise, it just doesn't work. So what do? Get in on the action, honk, curse, cut people off, drive over the sidewalk, let's go. Enough. At your destination, with your emotions out of control, in a bad mood, deep down with that feeling of guilt because you acted like an animal. In other words, sometimes it ruins your whole day. Because of this, there comes a time, everyone, when we need to lay our cards on the table and say, look, what you're using to deal with difficulties is nonsense. You don't know anything. These things aren't a good solution. They only cause problems and confusion. Plato's approach here would have worked out much better. Therefore, become aware of what is truly driving you through life. Bring that hidden box 2 up from the depths. Put it on the table and say, I no longer believe in this. In other words, what is he talking about? Philosophy exposes the false premises in our lives. These false premises remain there, beneath the surface. But when it comes time to make decisions, we act based on them, not on what we believe to be right. And we need to uncover this, we need to unmask it. This requires tremendous courage. It's no small matter. But if you want to change, you must have this courage. If I want to move forward, my friends, I need 2 pieces of information. Where I want to go and where I'm right now. Isn't that right? If you give me your address, invite me to visit you, and I get lost on the way, they'll call you and ask, how do I get there? What are you going to ask me? Where are you right now? Look at the street name, look for the name of a nearby store. I need to know where you are in order to help you get here. You need these 2 things. In other words, I want to become a better human being. The one I wrote in my planner shows where I'm going, but I need to know where I am starting, where I am. This requires us to expose the false premises in our lives. That friend of yours at work got a promotion and you didn't. A truly good person, someone you like and admire, but still, there's a certain discomfort inside you. You congratulate them, give them a hug, celebrate, but that discomfort remains within you. You need to know how to confront this feeling. Bring it before your spirit and say, you are feeling envy. Do you know what that is? You are feeling envy. It hurts, it's painful, it feels ugly, you want to hide, you don't want to admit something like that. But from the moment you recognize it, you have the ability to overcome it. No, come on, me? Envious? I don't feel that way. You'll stay stuck there your whole life. Oh, I can't get things done in my life, nothing ever works out. I don't know, maybe it's the stars. Oh, the stars. Stand before your spirit and say, you are lazy. Did you understand that well? Lazy. Recognize your laziness and fight against it. All right, things will change. This one will change. In other words, it takes courage to acknowledge these false premises in our lives so we can transform them. But it is absolutely necessary. We must have this courage to acknowledge what is truly driving us. What is hidden in the shadows, moving us, guiding our journey through life. as if they were the strings of a marionette. This must be recognized. What else? Continuing, evil is a byproduct of negligence, laziness, and distraction from the goals of our lives. In other words, evil is nothing more than the result of us thinking about millions of other things instead of focusing on growing and giving our best at every moment. Then I'm distracted, thinking about countless trivialities. I do a poor job. I treat others badly. I fail to give someone the attention they deserve. I don't know, maybe I drive carelessly on the street. In other words, a lot of gaps, voids, and flaws start to appear. Defects come from defectos, meaning holes, emptiness, or voids. Why is that? Because of distraction, negligence, and lack of focus. That is where evil is born. Evil is not some dark entity plotting against you from the shadows. No, evil is when you're not present in both body and mind in your own life. What did you make room for? For shadows. If it wasn't you, then who was driving the car? It was a shadow. If it wasn't you relating to others, then who was it? A shadow. Through negligence, distraction, or the laziness to take the reins of our own lives, we end up making room for these shadows that go about doing whatever they please. It is a distraction from the kind of human being we aspire to be. If we were capable of taking the reins of our lives and being present at all times, always striving to give our best in every moment, there would be no room for evil. There's no point in us imagining things. We like to do that. No one out there is plotting against me. The stars are my astrological hell. There must be some being out there who is. No, you're the one not taking your life seriously. That is the truth. You yourself are not taking your life seriously. Acknowledge this and start being more present in your own life. Remember that little bit of time recorded in the cemetery. Shall we increase that number? Shall we work to improve that number? In other words, take the reins of your life more firmly, and you will see that these gaps won't happen as often. Where does so much confusion and carelessness come from? Sometimes there are breakups. Sometimes people get hurt because you hardly even look at them. You don't notice that they need you. So many things are left undone in these gaps of lack of focus, of distraction. How much is left unfinished? And then our lives become infiltrated by shadows. Do not resort to conspiracy theories. The shadows are not united, trying to bring us down. It's you who are lost in idle thoughts. Let's be practical. The root of evil is, after all, being lost in those idle thoughts. Let's be practical and objective. In this way, we begin to act in our lives with clarity and positivity, knowing where we want to go. Happiness is born from our commitment to personal growth. It is truly remarkable what a dedicated human being is capable of achieving. Perseverance, consistency, focus every day. I will achieve this. I know people who do it, people who learn a foreign language in a year, people who manage to build a house in record time, people who are able to finish a complicated project, a thesis, also in just a few months. When a human being sets their mind to something and says, "I'll do that," they will only stop if the world comes to an end. And even if there's just a sliver of possibility left, they will keep going. If he decides on something, you should move aside. The human will is something unstoppable. I'll do it, so step aside, because I'll get there. You need to get out of the way or ITLL run you over. It's going to get there. I have no doubt. Leonardo da Vinci became determined to paint a picture in which the subject would appear as real as a human being standing right in front of you. He would say, "Look, there are no lines. In every painting, people draw lines to outline the figures. But people don't have lines. I'm seeing lines on you." It is simply a blend of colors that emerges from the background, gradually transforming into a hue, and then dissipates, becoming the background once again. Things are not defined by lines. I'll create this, which is known as the technique of sfumato. So what did he do? He was so focused that nothing could distract him. He said, "I will do this and come out the other side with it." And he did. In other words, when a human being dedicates themselves to a cause, and there is no better cause than building ourselves. The Mona Lisa is very beautiful, but the creation of a human being is truly extraordinary. There is no greater cause than building oneself into a genuine human being, and humanity is in great need of this. A genuine human being is rarer than a golden lion tamarin, rarer than a panda bear, rarer than a blue macaw. It is truly an issue of extinction. You have all heard of Diogenes of Sinope, the one who lived inside a barrel, haven't you? Every day, well, maybe not every day, but several times a week would go to the Greek agora, the public square, with a lantern in his hand, at noon, bringing it close to people's faces. Are you going crazy, Diogenes, at this time of day, with that lantern? What are you looking for? I'm searching for a man, but today I haven't found a single one. And then he would walk away. Do you think that if he lived today, it would be any easier? In other words, the kind of human being that Diogenes was searching for is in danger of extinction, my friends. It's an ecological problem. It is. Therefore, if we are able to build this within ourselves, there is no work more noble or more necessary for humanity. So, this is yet another definition of happiness. It is born from our dedication, from our personal development. Be wary of social conventions. This is something that truly amazes me. Consider that this was already happening in the 2nd century, and they were already facing this problem. In other words, humanity is not simple. Just look at that. Be wary of social conventions. What is new is not necessarily good. Support only that which is rooted in justice, humanity, kindness, and so on. Support exclusively that which helps human beings grow in terms of values, virtues, and wisdom. Support this. What is new may simply be a different disguise for something that has existed for a long time. Change only makes sense when it is a change for the better. Our society is addicted. For the sake of change itself. In other words, you always have to keep changing the appearance of things, how people behave, the products they use not to improve these changes. Many times, a multitude of things are introduced into our lives, things we never needed in order to live well. It creates a host of dependencies, a multitude of gadgets that we used to live perfectly well without. We become addicted to fanatically seeking out what is new. Do you know one of my deep, existential, philosophical concerns? The line at the door of the sale of the new Apple, the new iPhone. Have you ever seen the line that forms at the Apple store when something new comes out? Are those people really in need of something new? Is there really something missing from their phones? There isn't, is there? Recently I read something, not sure if it's true, that the iPhone 16 is actually worse than the 15 and didn't bring any new features. There just isn't that much creativity to keep inventing so many new things. People come up with useless commands, change things, but we're addicted to always need something new. Change is good if it's for the better. It doesn't make sense for us to keep changing things, changing our lives, changing everything, our relationships, our feelings. If it's not for the better, you're just wasting your time. Changes only make sense. The new only makes sense if it is truly new and better, keeping in mind the human ideal that brings you closer to it. So, introducing Stoicism as an advisor to 21st century society. That was a positive innovation. Not all new things are bad. You have to analyze each one individually. Don't be a slave to the obsession with the new that society has. Do not be a slave to social conventions. Support only that which embodies justice, humanity, kindness, and similar values. Because we will have to search diligently, won't we? To find something that truly holds that meaning. It's not that common, after all. We must discover our role and remain true to it, regardless of whether others are true to theirs. We do not depend on others, but on our own elevated personal principles. Our mothers always knew this. And if it wasn't our mother, it was our grandmother. She would say, "Can I do such and such?" "No, but everyone else does it." And what would she say? "You are not everyone else, my dear. You are not everyone else." She was absolutely right. We are not everyone else. In other words, you must be true to the very best within yourself. If others are not, what a pity, what a pity. I hope that one day they will be. I'll be faithful to the very best within me. I will express my best throughout life, always. I will leave my heart stamped on every step of this staircase. I will give my best wherever I go. I will leave the world behind me just a little better than it was before I passed through. I'll do this out of a matter of definition, of life principles, of philosophy, of living. I'll do it. No one else does. What a pity. What a pity that they don't. It would be good if they did. No one does. I'll do it. I'll be different. Wow, I'll stand out. I will set myself apart from others. Don't be so afraid of loneliness. And, in fact, you won't be alone. Because the people who are searching for themselves, before long, you will meet all of them as well. Soon enough, all those who are on the journey to find themselves will meet at a certain point. And even those who are left behind, when they need someone who isn't just a buddy for happy hour, but someone who takes life seriously and can help them with a problem, they won't remember the happy hour buddy, they'll remember you. So, do not fear loneliness. Do what is yours to do. It's not about going against the crowd. If the crowd is heading in the right direction, I'll go with them with the greatest happiness in the world. But if they are going in the wrong direction, I'll go the right way alone, without any problem. Today, we live with the illusion that it is better to be with the crowd, even if they are heading toward an abyss, than to save yourself alone. That's a lack of self-esteem and a lot of neediness. In other words, be true to your principles. If others aren't too bad, root for them. But do not give up on yourself. This was already a problem back then, just imagine. Being labeled, being like Machado de Assis, being defined by the crowd around us, out of neediness, out of fear, out of insecurity about asserting ourselves in life. And to be who we truly are. Free your heart from ambition and fear, and do not aspire to be anything else. Accept the best version of yourself. An exceptional life is one that responds to what is ours to do in the best way possible. In other words, there is a line of action of animal consciousness, which is fear and desire. This is the horizontal line of action of animal consciousness. What does this mean? If you want to motivate, let's say, a little dog to leave a place where it is it any use to philosophize with a little dog that's lying in the doghouse? It wasn't made for that. It won't work. It's just empty talk that will put the dog to sleep. You will have to use two tools. Either you intimidate it, banging your slippers on the floor, hey, hey, hey. He leaves out of fear, right? Or you offer him something, a treat, something he likes, or show him the leash. He leaves out of desire. Is there any other way to motivate a dog besides fear or desire? There isn't. That's the equation of the animal self. But for human beings, that's not enough. Human beings are capable of much more than that. So, when we learn to free our hearts from ambition and fear, we move beyond the realm of animal consciousness and enter a sphere of human consciousness. What I am motivated by. It is the deep desire to truly be myself. It is the profound will to fulfill my role in the world. It is the sincere wish to contribute so that the world becomes just a little bit better. That is what defines me. That is where I'm happy. I would not trade this for anything at all. But I would really like to have a certain position. That's fine, you can have a position, but what is the price you have to pay for it? I would have to betray several of my own principles. It's not worth it. It doesn't pay off. I have to run away from certain things. But to run away, do you have to abandon your principles? If you have values, it's not worth it. Stay where you are, because the damage will be less. In other words, we should not aspire to anything that holds greater value for us than our own human identity. An identity that is deep, grounded in values, virtues, and principles. I have told you this story millions of times. I think everyone here must have already heard it. I really enjoy telling this story, which is an Inca story. I'll tell it quickly, because I think everyone knows it. It takes place when the Incas were being defeated by the Spanish here in the Americas. Pre-Columbian, the Spanish arrived and started beating them, winning one battle after another. There were only a few of them. They arrived with Pizarro, just 300 men. They recruited enemy tribes, promising them things and waging war. A dirty war. When the Incas went out to battle, the Spanish would attack the cities, which were left with only women and children, killing everyone to break the warriors' spirits. In plantations, they burned food, they waged a silent war and kept winning. By the time they arrived near the end, the Incas were already a small group. They were taking refuge in a citadel called Vilcabamba. Pizarro sent an ambassador there to negotiate their surrender, to put an end to the war, because they no longer had any strength left. Why continue with all that? He sent an ambassador, and the Sapa Inca, who was their leader, their king, refused to negotiate. None at all. And the ambassador came to him and said, "Well, since I'm here, let me ask you something. The first time we waged dirty war against you, it must have been a surprise. The second, the third time, it was still a surprise. But the fourth, fifth, 10th, 20th, 30th, why didn't you start using the same weapons against us? Why didn't you start doing the same thing?" And then this Sapa Inca is said to have replied, "Here, we only want the land. But only if we can stand tall upon it. If it means crawling on the land, we would rather leave it to you." Do you understand this? We, the Incas, will see only the land, if it is to stand upright upon it. If it is to crawl, we leave it to you. So, if something forces you to crawl, let it go. Do not give up your values, your principles. It is not worth that much. Nothing is worth that much. Nothing deserves that you abandon what is best within you. To abandon your dignity, your honor, your principles. Don't fall for that. It's not worth it. The price is far too high. Do not pay that price. Do not aspire to be anything other than the best version of yourself. And when I'm being the best version of myself, I'm happy, I'm fulfilled. I truly deserve it. I deserve my life just as it is. I have achieved everything I wanted, which is the most valuable thing. There is nothing more valuable than that. There is no currency capable of buying our dignity, nothing that could offer a reward equal to it. What could they give you in exchange for your dignity? What? What could possibly have such value? There is nothing that could truly match its worth. Continuing on. There is no such thing as a good or bad event. A good person is always asking themselves, what is the right thing to do now? In other words, at this moment, what is the right thing to do? Whether the event was pleasant or unpleasant, well, that is another matter. Many times, it is the unpleasant things that help us grow the most. And if life is about growth, if we are here for that purpose, sometimes unpleasant things are actually good. When, at a certain age, people ask us what made us grow the most in life, generally, we remember the painful experiences. Isn't that right? There is a curious fact about human beings. When they achieve victories, when pleasant things happen, they do not reflect. They become very euphoric, and they do not reflect. When someone goes through difficult trials, they become reflective, and it is in these moments that they grow the most. So, this is a very interesting fact. We grow, don't we? And if we grow, then the event was not so bad after all. If it made me grow, and that is the purpose of my life, it may not have been pleasant, but it was good. In other words, there is no such thing as a good or bad event. It is a person who stands before life and asks themselves, what is the most humane thing to do at this moment? What is most worthy of the human condition to do right now? They consult their valuable role models, asking, what would so and so do here? They behave in the best way possible, no matter what lies before them. whether it is a victory or a defeat. To give things their proper names, to observe and not to judge. This is another habit we tend to have. Do you notice that we don't describe things as they truly are? We always speak by adding an adjective and a judgment. Someone goes in to take a shower. He comes in and it takes 1 minute, 36 seconds, and 2/10. Then someone walks by and asks, "How is so and so in the shower?" He takes a shower in just 1 minute, 36.2 seconds. You say, "He doesn't wash himself well. That one must be smelling bad." Isn't that right? You saw it. No, you want to say he showers quickly. Don't say what you haven't seen. Don't assume. Don't make things up. Analyze things objectively. I saw this. Taking a shower, 136.2. What happens in there? I don't know. Whether he washes himself well or not, I don't know. Do you notice that, when we talk about things, we already speak with a judgment embedded in our words? One thing that really bothers me is that, many times, within journalism, within the press in general, they do this as well. I find it absurd. They are there to inform us, not to shape us according to their own opinions. Do you notice that the press already gives us the facts predigested, with their opinion embedded in them? In general, through all the channels you have, they don't give you the facts. They don't describe what actually happened. They already present it with their own judgment embedded. They don't give you the right to form your own judgment. You receive the opinion along with the information itself. That's terrible, a terrible mechanism of induction and manipulation. We have this addiction, meaning we need to stop judging, stop defining and labeling things. We haven't seen it, and if we haven't seen it, we have no reason to go around making judgments. Because even if we had seen it, often it's not our place to judge everything that happens in the universe. We should focus only on what truly concerns us, and that alone is already a lot. In other words, give things their proper names, acknowledge only what you have truly seen, and refrain from judging. This is a deeply ingrained habit. It would require us to rethink our entire way of communicating in the world. We are constantly judging everything around us. We should contemplate the world with freshness, free from preconceived frameworks. All of us know very little. Arrogance is merely a mask for cowardice. That is, when something new happens in your life. I understand this. This I know about. Leave it to me. Sometimes, life is offering you a completely new opportunity, and yet you keep framing it in terms of past experiences that have nothing to do with it. The arrogance of thinking you know everything. I have a name for this. I usually call it the studio apartment universe. It's when a person's universe is as small as a studio apartment. So, within that small space, the person believes they know a lot. But if they had any sense of the true size of the universe, they would say what Socrates said, "All I know is that I know nothing." Do you realize how much courage it takes to say that? It means wisdom. I am seeing so many things to see. I have a sense of the vastness of the unknown. I often say that I only know that I know nothing because Socrates said it. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know that. And that is a fact. To say, all I know is that I know nothing, it takes a lot of courage, an acknowledgement of just how vast the unknown is, something most people don't have. Therefore, beware of arrogance, which is merely the mask of cowardice. That person with a pretentious air, who believes they already know everything that comes their way. The greatest enemy of knowledge is thinking you already know. This is Platonic. The worst enemy of knowledge is thinking you know. That person won't learn anything new. It's a studio apartment universe. To overcome negative habits, we must space them out, gain. Each day, without them. Remember the mother with her young child. The child takes a small step. She celebrates, invites the neighbors, bakes a cake. Soon after, the child takes a second step and she sets off fireworks. It's wonderful. She celebrates every small achievement. Do the same for yourself. I made some progress, overcame that negative tendency I didn't do it once. How wonderful. Celebrate every small step forward as if you were guiding a child. Making small achievements. Toast to that, recognize its value. I don't know, I used to criticize every day. Now, I'm 3 days without criticizing. The next day, I slip and make a small criticism. That's okay, but it was 3 days without criticizing. Next time, it will be 4. In other words, I'm making progress day by day, pushing my boundaries forward. If you find yourself facing a huge staircase, don't stand there looking at the whole thing and saying, "Oh, I can't do it." Don't look at it that way. Just focus on the step right in front of you. That one, I can handle. Tomorrow, look at the next step. That one, I can handle too. Before you know it, you'll be at the top. In other words, I'll overcome this flaw today. Tomorrow, I will overcome it again. You've spent a long time without it, lost habit, lost addiction, freed yourself. Keep fighting day after day. Keep striving to make each day work in your favor. One must be willing to pay the price to learn how to live, for living is an art. Pay attention, learn from events, learn from those people who have known how to live well. Learn from those reactions that a person has when they are beautiful and appropriate responses. Try to imagine who they modeled themselves after to behave in such a way. Try to put yourself in their position. Imagine yourself as much better than you are today, and follow that example. And finally, to conclude our conversation, he puts us on the spot and says the following. Put your principles into practice. Now, define your principles and submit yourself to them as if they were laws. Enough with excuses and postponement. From this moment on, swear that you will stop disappointing yourself. Decide to be an extraordinary person and do whatever it takes to become one now, in this very moment. I'll practice in a little while, I'll practice now, in this very moment. Decide, I'll stop disappointing myself from this day forward, from this very moment. Zero tolerance for those things that hurt me, that wound me, for those weaknesses to which I'm always making concessions. Zero tolerance. We need to practice it. We use it in wrong situations, not right ones. I always tell you that same little story, which almost everyone knows, right? An exercise in imagination. On your arm, right now. There is an insect resting. This insect is a cockroach. A hard-shelled one. And it can fly. Do you look at it and say, "I'll get rid of it in a minute"? No, it's right now, isn't it? And you throw it against the wall. Isn't that right? Do the same with the flaws you want to overcome. Zero tolerance. They harm you far more than a poor insect ever could. With a cockroach, you can do it. Zero tolerance. The moment I see it, I cut it off. Throw it against the wall immediately. In other words, stop disappointing yourself. It's not later, it's now, from this very moment. Begin to honor and live by those things you believe to be noble, just, and good. When, from this very moment, here and now, I will no longer accept. Always feeling ashamed of myself when I look in the mirror, I am putting an end to that story right now. If we don't give ourselves an ultimatum and enforce the law of zero tolerance, we will never begin to change. And we are here for that purpose. Well, see the world to grow as human beings. To leave the world a little better than the one we found, even if it is just a little bit. To leave this life greater than we were when we entered it. To benefit the people around us. We cannot give up on that. On sharing our message, fulfilling our mission, speaking our sacred word, and delivering our message to the world. We cannot give up on the deepest and most beautiful essence of what it means to live a human life. Therefore, let us take life seriously. When? Now. This is basically what I wanted to share with you. I hope it serves as a good inspiration, as these historical reflections always tend to be. I remind you that we are opening a new class here in Asa Sol this Thursday, the 20th. Come and get to know us. It is also a lecture. Come and see what it is all about. I am sure you will really enjoy it. Thank you very much, everyone.